All these objects are going to fall. I'm going to export this scene. To export in Blender, it would be the same process. Select everything you want to export. File, export, export FBX. Make sure to click Selected Objects to limit the export to the selected objects. Give it a name, and click on Export FBX. I'm going to select everything and export the scene as one FBX, and then export this workbench top as its own piece. You would do this to simplify the placement of the collision object on this object. I also moved the pivot point to export. Just select everything, File, Export Selection. Then I'll come back and select just the workbench top and export it. Export Selection. Go back, select just the workbench top, File, Export, FBX, making sure this is still checked, selected objects. Now you're ready to set up the scene in Unity. Make a new folder, right-click, Create Folder, calling this Room. Open up the folder by double-clicking. You can get back to the main assets area by clicking here or up here. Going back to this folder, import. Two ways to import: right-click, import new asset. Just drag it from the folder. The other asset you'll need is the workbench top. Select the workshop set and press the delete key to remove it. And do the same with the props. This is a Unity URP project, has set up already the post-process effects, which will include the bloom and tonal maps. This is an excellent way just to quick start a project. With this asset selected, go under Inspector, save them into the same folder as the room. Click Fix Now to mark all the normal maps as normal maps. Then click on Extract Materials. Now you're ready to set up the scene. Select the FBX and drag it not out here where you can interactively place this object. Drag it here, and it's going to be placed in the scene exactly where it was in the 3D application. You're doing this because you need to precisely place this workbench top a little later when we're swapping it in for the one that's currently in the scene. Once you set up your scene, replace this top. This way you can do some nice animation with it. I'm selecting just this top, which is part of the prefab, selecting it in the prefab and unchecking it. That hides this top from rendering within the prefab. Going to my other FBX, which is just the workbench top, and dragging it to the hierarchy. And you can see that it's placed exactly in the same position as the hidden one. What you want to do next is assign colliders to this and all these objects and the ground, and then a rigid body to all these, to the workbench top. And with the workbench top, we're going to turn off gravity and enable is kinematic. Starting with this vase, add component, box collider. And I'll do that for all these objects. And that displays all the colliders. And there's my box collider for the workbench top. I'm going to assign rigid bodies to all these, and then the workbench top. Add component, look up rigid body. You can change the mass. The last one to add a component to is the workbench top. And with this one, unchecking use gravity and checking is kinematic. That way we can create an animation clip for this one. I forgot to add a collider to the floor, and let me do that now. And I'm also going to add it to the sides and the cross section of this workbench. Add component. Box collider. Same thing with the sides. And this bottom shelf. To create the animation for this, select the object, go to Window, Animation, Animation. Click this button to create a new animation clip. Save the clip. You want to rotate and maybe reposition this tabletop. Click on Add Property, Transform, Position. Add Property, Transform, Rotation. To zoom in and zoom out of this timeline, hold down the Alt or Option key and right mouse button to pan, left mouse button to zoom. By second one, there's already keyframes there. If you didn't want those keys, you could select them by selecting them and pressing the delete key. I'm just going to move them. First 2 seconds of the animation, nothing is happening. This will give time to do a camera animation if that's what you're interested in. By 3 seconds in, some rotation is happening. Picking up the rotate tool, which is the E key. The center rotation is exactly where you placed your pivot point in your 3D application. If you need to change that, then you have to nest game objects. Quicker and easier to do in your 3D application. Keeps the hierarchy clean. After you rotated and repositioned this top, click here, Add Keyframe, to record that translation in the timeline. Let's take a look at what we created. Oh, look, it's repeating over and over again. Interesting. By default, animation clips are set to loop. Click on the animation clip. In the inspector, uncheck loop. And now you can play this animation again. It's not bad. It's interesting that they all just fall down straight like that. Guess gravity's pretty high on this planet, and these objects don't have any bounce. Let's get these objects moving a little bit, and that's by placing a physical material on these objects. You might want to add a physics material to these objects to vary the way the objects interact with the scene. A physics material will specify the frictions and the amount of bounciness. You might also want to add a physics material to the ground. To create a physics material, right-click, go to Create, and select Physics Material. You can name this Vase Material. Clicking on it. Here's the properties. Dynamic friction, the friction that slows it down when it's in motion. Static friction, stiction it has before the system gets going, before the object starts moving. Bounce, the bounciness of the object. I'm going to duplicate this by pressing Command D or Control D. I'm going to call this Vase 2. This vase is going to be less bouncy. I'm going to also increase the static friction before it starts sliding. And also you can duplicate this one, use it for the floor. You could try it. Assign a physics material, click on an object. Within the inspector, go to the collider section and drag that physics material to the material slot right there. Now you can look at how this changes up your automation. Before, all these objects fell and just stayed there. We got a little more motion going. Keep on playing with these materials to change up the simulation. The other thing you can vary is the type of collider being used. Right now, you placed a box collider on these objects. I'm going to change that out for a capsule. Clicking these dots to remove the component. And you can just do one to try it out. Add component, collider. Instead of box collider, choose capsule collider. The box, when it falls on the ground, isn't going to have a lot of motion. This one should roll. Click this icon, go to Advanced Project Settings, check this box, Enable Preview Packages, click I understand, close this window, go to this drop-down, pick Unity Registry, type in Recorder, select Unity Recorder, click on Install.